Hello, listener. What you are about to listen to is the episode of Emilia Perez that we recorded about a year and a half ago because we are considering this episode 0 of the Queerdos miniseries. The miniseries of queerness, its weirdness, and how, in this case, it's been commodified by big ol' Hollywood to make Oscar bait. And with that, Marcy, how have you changed since we recorded this?
A big part of this movie is Emilia Perez getting surgery. And at the time, I was like, this is so unrealistic. Well, now I've actually gone through the surgery, so now I know that even deeper because I had bottom surgery in 2025. So there was like the obvious thing of like, oh, they didn't even mention electrolysis, and that's something that you need to do for like a year before the surgery. And yeah, it's possible that like maybe she got the electrolysis before like she met Zoe Saldana's character, but it's just not something that you hand wave away. And you just like jump from, it's like Zoe Saldana's character negotiates with the transphobic doctor, and then penis and vagina song happens, and before you know it, they jump to the future, and it's like, oh, everything is done. Don't have to worry about like the recovery time. Don't have to worry about dilation. Did Emilia Perez what kind of cushion did she get? Like, did she walk to the park and sit on a cushion afterwards like I did? And I get how it's like someone might say, well, for trans people, we don't have to focus on the struggles. We can have stories about trans people who are started as a successful 501c3, because that's what the movie is about. Well, the movie ends with her dying in a car fire, so I don't know about that. But yeah, I think it just reinforces my initial reaction to the movie of like, this is not a movie about trans people the way that trans people are living today.
The transphobia and racism within this movie, I barely think we were even approaching the level of worrisome needed with the Trump 2 admin coming in. I mean, it feels so like Emilia Perez feels like all the social mores and conversations and despondent point of views of the American or the Western male mind was put into a blender and liquefied into a paste. Not even a smoothie, a paste. And because it is transphobic, it's racist, it shows a billionaire as a sympathetic figure. The music sucks. Like, I can't describe how much this movie fits at the center of the zeitgeist of a certain type of person. Not the world in general, not even the Western world in general, but it definitely fits perfectly in the middle of the zeitgeist of the Western male mind, the right-wing Western male mind at that. And I think Trump 2 is honestly all about that too, but it is the taking the thought and putting it into action. I don't even think we could have assumed that Iran would have been bombed the way that it was, or the deportations would have gone the way that it was, but it did. And those came about purely because of this right-wing Western mind that is present within Emilia Perez.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's cliche to be like, Trump 2 was even worse than we expected. But I think it's because, like, Trump 1 was bad. Trump 2 has been worse. We were expecting it to be worse. They told us it would be worse. But actually living the reality of that is different than predicting it. What can I tell Jackie Sadiar today? Don't make a fucking movie about trans people again. Let a trans person do it.
What is this movie's legacy? Honestly, nothing. If this movie's gonna have a legacy, it's gonna be the controversy of Carla Sofia Gascon's like Islamophobic tweets. And I think it's going to also be this artifact of the big question of the 21st century, which is how can we stop being such freaks about trans people? I don't think this movie is going to have a positive memory at all in the next 10 years. What do people remember of this movie in 2026? I don't think a damn thing. I just don't think a damn thing. I don't know anyone that's talking about this movie or thinking about this movie outside of it being a fever dream of racism and transphobia. And even in our recording, that's kind of where we landed. In 2036, I assume there's going to be something even grosser that comes out that's going to supplant this as the trans movie that wins the Oscar. You know, like it's just so strange that there is nothing of this movie that's going to stick. I think it just shows how movies these days can only be right wing because they're so expensive to make, and the people with the power to greenlight the budgets needed to make movies in the 2020s are fundamentally right wing leaning, because that's how capital is. And I think this trend is only going to continue until it doesn't.
The thing about this movie is that there were multiple waves. First, there was a wave of cis people watching the movie and giving it accolades. Then there was a wave of trans people watching it and saying, this is terrible. And of course, there were multiple other waves, because that first wave was mostly, of course, white cis critics, and eventually more people of color watched it and were like, yo, this is racist. So I think the thing about it is that it had gotten some acclaim and some tomatoes thrown on it before it was nominated for Best Picture. And then when people were watching it, like on the Best Picture race, they were like, oh, this kind of stinks. And I think it was Gascon's tweets. It almost gave people an excuse to be like, oh, well, you know, obviously this is why we can't vote for the movie. Because the thing is, the Oscar voters couldn't admit that it was their bad taste that led to them nominating the movie in the first place. There had to be some extenuating circumstance that made it so that the movie was tainted. So yes, Gascon's tweets were bad. The movie itself is bad. Things that the director, Audiard, said were bad. And obviously, a trans person is a very easy scapegoat. We've seen that many, many times over the last 2 years. You know, there have been instances, of course, where white trans people have said shit that is not good and have gotten rightfully called out for it. But I think that, like, the continuous pattern of trans people being called out, like, you have to notice that. And trans people getting called out, like, that gets more traction than a cis person getting called out. And it's going to snowball. And that's why it was this Gascon's comments that really became the focal point of the discourse as it approached Oscars. And that's why people were like, yeah, she can't win. You know, it's not like the Oscars were the only awards body that awarded this movie. But the thing is, like, if the Oscars hadn't nominated this movie, I think a lot of people wouldn't have had to watch it in the first place. You know, I watched it before it was nominated, but that was because we kind of knew it was going to be nominated. And my trans friends were saying that it's abysmal.
It is abysmal. And with that, enjoy this episode. Lily Wachowski would be a fan, and I'm certain she has some big thoughts on the perfect intersection in between transness and Mexicanness. You would think that's just a trans Mexican person, but no, that's us. That's Doveweather.
Exactly. Yeah. Doveweather. And thank goodness that they made a movie just for us.
Yeah, the trans fam understander has logged in. Me, AP.
I guess that makes me the Mexican understander. God damn it.
Marcy.
Yeah. But we're here talking about Emilia Perez.
The third honorary co-host.
Yeah.
We like digivolved to the point of merging together. We would be Emilia Perez.
I guess so, yeah. Like in Digimon, when Agumon and Gabumon, they like warp Digivolve, and like the Digimon fans are going to kill me for this one because, I am the Digifreak.
I've been saying this, the way you wiggle your fingers.
But essentially, when they do like the Goten and Trunks fusion into I think it's Omnimon in the Digimon movie. That's us turning into Emilia Perez. But no, in reality, like our Digi-evolution would not be written by a cis Frenchman.
It wouldn't be. It would be directed though.
Yeah, it would be directed.
Because we are going to talk about Emilia Perez by... I'm just going to go ahead and say Jacques.
Look, we're not going to pronounce French correctly on this show. You can ask for a lot of things, but you can't ask for that.
Yeah, you can ask for Marcy's phone number if you're Lily Wachowski. You cannot ask for good pronunciation in French.
Yeah, but yeah, Jacques Audiard is the director of this movie. This movie came out this year. You can see it in some theaters, but both of us watched it on Netflix.
True. I mean, Netflix. Plus. And Emilia Perez is kind of the final, maybe the final movie in a big tent of trans movies in 2024.
I mean, I'm not counting out Lily Wachowski dropping something on like December 31st, like
The Matrix Unclipped. So what is Emilia Perez about?
So it stars Zoe Saldana, and she plays this lawyer who is defending a scumbag in Mexico. And then suddenly she gets kidnapped by someone, this big cartel figure, and is told that, hey, you have to agree to do this thing right now before you even know about it. You could get a lot of money. She's like, yeah. And then she finds out that this person wants to, in this person's own words, become a woman. And Zoe Saldana is going to be the person who, does research on the surgery and makes sure everything happens. And this character is named Emilia Perez, this trans character played by Carla Sofia Gascon. And you also find out that her wife is played by Selena Gomez.
Her name is Jessie.
Yes. And Zoe Saldana's character is Rita Mora Castro. And this is kind of a setup for the movie. But the other thing about this movie is it's also a musical.
That is kind of this might be a movie about Mexicans. This might be about trans people, but it's definitely a musical.
Yeah. And the songs are pretty bad. Like, I haven't seen Wicked yet, but I can guarantee that like no one is going to want to listen to the songs in this movie the way that people are listening to the songs in Wicked.
I mean, I've never heard a song from Wicked, and I will not be watching it. I'm putting that stake
You've
down.
You've never heard Defying Gravity?
I only do.
Oh, you're lucky. You haven't been to like a karaoke night where someone just starts belting that out.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe I just like my mental antibodies just attacked that memory and got rid of it.
Yeah. But the songs in this movie, they're all basically just like characters saying the plot. And oftentimes the characters are just like whisper singing, and like I wouldn't even know that they're singing if the captions weren't giving me like these little musical notes next to the words. And it's just like a symptom of like how truly terrible this movie is.
It's like when I first watched it, I was like, "This is real. This is hitting real Les Mis Anne Hathaway as." But really, what it is I learned eventually that it's more of an opera style where like you're singing it, but also just kind of saying it, speaking it. In totality, though, it becomes the opposite of an earworm.
Yeah.
An eyeworm?
Yeah, if we want to start getting into it, I think probably the most egregious song is the one where Zoe Saldana's character is in the hospital, and it's just like her finding out about like different surgeries that someone like will get if they want gender affirming surgery, and the entire song is basically the doctor or patients like listing surgeries and then her saying yes.
It's kind of a wonderful song. It kind of goes a little bit like mammoplasty,
Yes,
vaginoplasty,
yes,
rhinoplasty,
yes.
laryngoplasty.
What is that?
Your larynx gets a snip, and I don't know, something happens.
Yes, 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 yes.
It is so egregious.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, this movie treats getting surgeries as the way to quote become a woman. Like it's just so antiquated, the language that's used in this film, and basically, like Zoe Saldana, our protagonist, even she is calling this trans person a male pronoun, and you know, and it just really feels like the trans like politics of this film are like set in the 90s or something.
You would think something made in the 2020s, like there would be at least some updated like surgeries thrown out there, like female feminization surgery.
Yeah, I feel like some important context that I want to give near the front of this episode is that this is a movie that's in contention for Best Picture nominee at the Oscars. So it's not like we're just like ragging on some bad movie.
We're not picking on a Frenchman.
Yeah, it's not like this is like an obscure movie that like some idiot made and no one's paying attention to. This is like a movie that unfortunately is getting a lot of attention, and people are going to be patting themselves on the back for supporting it. But it's like,
including us, we are part of the Academy, and this is actually the start of For Your Consideration campaign.
Yeah, Empress of was just the appetizer in terms of For Your Consideration.
It is very self-serving, though.
Yeah.
You just hit that.
Yeah.
You know, like one of the things that I brag about daily. If you follow us on Bluesky, you will see me like just what's it called? Skeet.
Yeah.
I'll skeet kind of hourly. I am a man. I am a cis man. I am a man. I am a cis man. But what's that sigh all about?
It's just like there's just so many things in this movie that are just like such a head scratcher. Like there's the song where she's singing like half man, half woman, half alive, half dead.
What? Trans people are half dead, right?
Yeah, we're all undead like creatures that are gonna like,
Wait, so like trans people are a little vampiric?
Yeah.
Half alive, half dead?
Like, I don't know why this movie exists. Like, it's just like I just feel like it's using this trans character to gain attention, and then using that to try to like gain prestige, but like for what purpose? Why?
You know, I think Jacques probably can't answer that. He might be you know, he might be saying that like it's contemporaneous like issues and it's important to like talk about and blah blah blah. I don't know. At least that's what I read here and there in his interviews. But I do struggle to see what this movie is about and for, and I also struggle to see what I should take away from it. This movie is like 2 hours long. It's about an hour and a half too long. And because it is a musical, like it does get tiresome. The first scene with the doctors in Bangkok is silly. Like it's a silly like scene. Yeah. But there's a follow up to that where Zoe Saldana is talking to the doctor that might be the one. And this doctor just so happens to be the one because he's a transphobe. And you know, if you want a good transition done, send in a transphobe.
Not just a transphobe in Tel Aviv.
And so like, but like, yeah, who is this for? What, like, as far as I understand, as the trans femme understander, like one doctor doesn't do the whole shebang. But this guy does? Like this one dude does.
And like Zoe Saldana has to like sing to him to change his mind. And he's like singing about like how, oh, she should change her ID instead. Like, yeah, like that scene displays its utter nonsense. And in our notes, you drew this like little graph that I really enjoyed. What's that about?
It's so in it. Part of the lyrics here, because this song doesn't just show you and doesn't just tell you, but it sings it to you, the motivations and thoughts of each person. And Zoe Saldana, after hearing some fucked up shit by this guy, responds with saying, changing the body changes society. Changing society changes the soul. Changing the soul changes society. Changing society changes it all.
Wow.
And if you go to our Instagram, Doveweather, at Doveweather, you can see this little diagram that I did, which really just sees that if you change the body, you can effectively change everything, which is an interesting belief. I believe that actually Jacques doesn't, in one of the interviews, says he doesn't believe. So this character just says it as the motivation to get this doctor to agree to start doing the biz.
Yeah, I will say I have no idea what this, like watching this movie did not tell me what this director believes. Like, so that doesn't really surprise me, but like, you know, it's like this movie it's still presenting this idea that like, oh, you have to get surgery to like be a trans woman, which is just like obviously not true. There are and this kind of goes back to what we read in Las Malas, which we did an episode about, where the author of Las Malas like wrote in the foreword about like, you know, us travestis, like we don't recognize like the terminology that is used like in the global north, this idea that like you need to have surgeries in order to be a travesti, that you need to have this or that. And then this movie is basically taking that idea and making it like the dumbest possible, and then trying to present it as like progressive.
Yeah, it is so. It feels regressive.
Uh-huh.
I can't speak for trans people, right? But I will. I'll speak for some of them. And the thing is, like, in honesty, being trans isn't about what surgeries you've had. And acceptance isn't about that either. But Jacques, who is like a 70-year-old man, who he acknowledges in his like interviews that he's an old fart, an old white man. He just doesn't really doesn't have the lived experience to like talk about this. In this movie, it's just shown that there's this real sense that you have to go through X, Y, and Z to be the version of acceptable transness that he carries around.
Yeah, like basically Emilia Perez goes through 2 years of HRT, like and like everyone is still using male pronouns. And I'm not saying that it is possible for like trans people to like not feel like they can call themselves female until they've done X, Y, or Z. But kind of the way the movie kind of presents that as like the only way. And yeah, like I think that like other trans critics have done a really good job of like taking this movie to task. And it's always funny to see like the main reason why this movie is getting awards attention is because of like cis critics and like awards voters. But I think especially thinking about how this year has been such a great period for like trans movies that are created by trans people, like I Saw the TV Glow, like People's Joker. The fact that this is the one that's like getting the real prestige at the end of the year, I think that is more of a black mark on that prestige than anything else.
I mean, I see that. One of the things that we agree upon is that this movie is self-indulgent. And I think one of the reasons maybe why it's getting so much Oscar talk, so much awards, is that it's kind of an easy movie to understand. There is no, you could never meet a trans person, watch this and be like, I understand the trans experience now. Oh, you just gotta get a vaginoplasty and then a BBL and lighten up your skin somehow, and then bam, you've changed genders. But it's because someone doesn't, if someone sees a physical change like, I don't know, like top surgery, like that is so much easier to understand because there's a physical material change than just the harder idea that gender is a construct that is malleable throughout time and societies and requires a more delicate touch than just you're born with this organ or you're born with that organ.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely were plenty of people who watched I Saw the TV Glow and like didn't understand it. Like, there are even some critics who didn't even understand that it was a trans narrative. So, yeah, I think you're right that this is definitely a lot more dumbed down. I also think that because it's like so operatic, it's so extreme. There's like kidnapping, there's cartels, there's musicals, there's
Switzerland.
Yeah. There's Selena Gomez with a bad Spanish accent, which I'm gonna let you talk more about.
I mean, yes, but we'll get to the Mexican side of this in a bit. I do feel like I do feel like I'm talking a lot about the trans side of things, but I want to hear more from your thoughts.
Yeah, I think. Okay, I'm just gonna say it now. I'm gonna spoil the ending to this. So if you really care about how this movie ends, watch it. Come back to this. If you think I don't want to watch this movie, it sounds really bad, then you're probably right. But here we go. Spoilers. So, the ending is really bad. It ends with a shootout, and then Emilia Perez being thrown into the front hatch of a car, and Selena Gomez pointing a gun at this man who's driving, and then all three of them in the car careening off a cliff. The car explodes. They all die.
Very fucking dramatic.
Yeah, that's basically the end of the movie. And the gall this movie had to kill the trans character, like, you have to know that there's this trope of like killing gay and especially trans characters, and yet I was just kind of aghast when I saw that. I feel like the first act was really bad, the third act was really bad, the second act I try to find the good things in things. So I didn't hate the second act as much as the first and third.
You texted me something. You were like, "Oh, the second act when the trans character starts an NGO because she thinks she could save the world."
Yeah, I definitely have my critiques of that act, but I at least feel like it feels a little bit more grounded in realism, while the first and the third acts are mostly just there to like shock and provoke you. That it just felt very egregious, and there, I'm not saying that no trans character can be killed ever, or that like no main trans character can be killed ever, but like this movie just fell into so many of like the stereotypes of like the trans movie that it just feels so silly that like it's getting so much attention. And I know that probably shouldn't put too much stock into like, oh, this movie's getting awards attention, so that means that we have to look at it with a different eye. But
I went to www.autostraddle.com to see the review that they made, and she's a trans femme, and the thing that like she went through pretty much throughout her review is those tropes. It's killing your trans person. But more than that, it's also like the belief that like transitioning is similar to death somehow, or that you have to leave your family or your children to transition, and these other things. So like when you were watching this, like were these like emotional points that the movie wants you to feel? Like were they were they hitting?
I mean, I think it helped that I kind of knew what I was getting going into it. I've heard from other trans friends what this movie is like, and the trailer kind of lets you know like what you're getting into. So I was mostly kind of like laughing, I feel like, in the first half at what I was seeing, and I feel like the only like moment where I really got emotional, I think, was like there was a scene between Emilia and one of her kids, and they're like singing to each other, and I think that's partially because like her performance, I think, like in that scene is mostly good. Like some of the writing is still pretty bad, but it was, it's sweet to see a trans woman sing to her child and have her child sing back at her. So there were moments of the film where I was like, okay, but like everything else just like ruined it so bad that I was like, this is still the worst movie I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, no, I get that. Some of my favorite parts of Las Malas were the sweetness that all these trans women were showing the baby that they found. So I get that. I get that same sensation when I saw Amelia and her kid share that moment. When I am not trans, I was seeing that all I could see it is just, it's this feeling of almost like a caricature of a woman. Like this sense that like the highest level a trans woman could become is what is effectively a cis woman, which is bullshit, like what it is, the highest level of trans femme can reach is being a podcaster.
God damn.
And throughout it, like it felt like I was just watching trope after trope.
Yeah.
When I want to mention something here, that there isn't a real change in between the character Manitas and the character Emilia. And that is, of course, the pre and post transition. And these are characters, I would never.
Yeah, and I feel like the movie, it's hard for me to know like what the right thing to do here is, because the movie uses that other name. The movie doesn't really understand what a dead name is. So, like, for instance, Selena, I clocked it. I was like, oh, Selena's going to say that name at the end of the movie. And then it happened. And I'm like, yep. So, yeah.
Very strange. Clearly like a representation of how shallow this is. But there's a demeanor change in between the transition. In a way, Emilia is actually a way more fun character to follow and a way more interesting character to observe. There's a moment when once they meet up again and they're in Mexico and they're sitting on a table at a restaurant, like that conversation they're having in Spanish just feels so real to me. At a certain point, Emilia says, ¿Te puedes quedar aquí? Es chido. And like when I hear in that conversation and the way that she delivers that chido, which just means cool in Spanish, it feels so real. Like I've had a conversation with someone like that. But I think that is the actor bringing that out, not the writing.
Yeah. Like, really the only good parts of this movie are because of her. And in that sense, like, there is a possibility that like she'll win an Oscar for this role, and that'll be like the only award where I'll be like, okay, like I can see why she won that. But yeah, like the character herself is just like I keep not finishing my sentence because then I just get exasperated with this movie. But yeah, I feel like one thing that we've talked about is that the movie kind of treats her character differently than like other women. Like it definitely sexualizes Selena Gomez's character more than it sexualizes her. Like all we get from her is like we kind of get like some side boob after she. When we're seeing her like years after her surgeries, and that's kind of just used to show you, oh, she has like changes in her body.
There's also a moment when her love interest, Epefina or something like that, Emilia's in her kitchen of this love interest, and she's just like open robed and showing some skin, but not anything nude, no nudity.
Yeah, and I think this actually reminds me of kind of the other end of the spectrum, which in Penny Dreadful, there's a trans character who you did see nudity from, and then, of course, that trans character almost immediately died. So there definitely is examples of, like, trans characters, their bodies, like, being used to titillate in a way that just feels like that's all they're there for. So I don't think there's like a right way necessarily to do this, but
then you add the dimension of this being like a French director who presumably that is in the cast of human beings. That's one of the horniest possible layers you could be in.
I will say, if you want to see a good use of trans, like a trans character being sexualized, look at The People's Joker, because there you have Vera Drew. She's the director or the writer of the movie, and she's the star, and you can tell that she's getting a lot of joy of her tits being on display in that movie. And seeing her in person at the Music Box, it was very obvious that like she loves to like strut her stuff. So I love cases like that where a trans woman is just being hot on screen.
Yeah. Vera Drew's got me acting unwise. And like another movie, one that I saw recently, A Fantastic Woman, a Chilean movie. There's just like, there's some tasteful nudity in it that you would expect in kind of like an adult drama. It's not vulgar. It's not like incredibly like erotic, but it's enough to be like, okay, well, this is a closer representation of reality than whatever the fuck Emilia Perez is happening in. Because there's two sections that I think about, like the sexual eroticism being shown, and that is when Selena Gomez is doing her rendition of Cabaret, the Welcome Bienvenue Welcome song, and another part where Zoe Saldana is like in a gala and she's just like, she's throwing that thing around and at a certain point miming like cunnilingus, but like Emilia Perez is never given that eroticism.
Yeah, this also reminded me, somewhat tangential, of the part where Zoe Saldana brags about having a fat ass, and I know you have thoughts on that.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, look, all asses are beautiful. Just some asses are juicier, okay? And Zoe Saldana's great, but like what in that moment, it really is like this regressive belief that like a big ass is a negative for a woman, and that really does feel how antiquated Jackie's views are, because like we live in the post BBL world. Like we live in the post J-Lo, the J-Lo pioneering what can be brought out on public, you know, even Kim K.
That scene also is a scene where like there's a bunch of like working class people around singing with her, and I feel like the first of all, this is like a movie about a very rich person transitioning, and like, you know, there's so many, most trans people like are poor and working class and like can't even afford like the gender affirming care that they want. So the fact that this movie focuses on someone where money is not really an issue, it's like, what kind of trans stories are we telling? And also just like the way that the movie uses like working class people as props. I also think of like one of the first scenes where Zoe Saldana is kind of marching with people who are basically like protesting. But like that scene is really more about Zoe Saldana getting ready to like defend, you know, a murderer. So yeah, I think a lot of these issues are connected. Like, the gender aspect of it, the class aspect of it, and of course like the racial aspect of it.
It's the guy she's about to defend isn't just a murderer, he's a wife killer. You might even say a femicider. And Jacques, like he is walking around with an antiquated belief on a lot of what Mexico is. In that song, in that beginning song, like I think we're supposed to see Zoe Saldana as a kind of like a avenging, like a hard put upon lawyer that wants to see the world a better place, but that isn't backed up anywhere in the rest of the movie. Even in the NGO side of things.
Yeah, the NGO part is like really funny because I'm like, yeah, someone transitions and they immediately start an NGO, which also, you know, plays into the class part of it, is that she has the resources in order to do this. But yeah, I'm really excited to hear your thoughts about like the movie's like depiction of Mexico, and especially like how the politics have changed in Mexico in the last 5 to 10 years, and how that's not shown in the movie.
Yeah, thank you for that tee up. When I see this, I am a trans ally. I have a pin and everything. I see the inconsistencies, but also I see the inconsistencies in the antiquated beliefs of Mexico being shown. This movie was shot mostly in studio in Paris, not in location in Mexico. And this movie starts with, a woman being killed. There's a big narrative that femicide in Mexico is a big issue, and it is. It's just also a narrative used for anti-Mexican and anti-Latino purposes. Too many, like, no woman should be killed. No murder should happen.
Except if they're a CEO. Parody.
We were in Brooklyn, never Manhattan. And part of it is also like the way that is followed up by seeing this drug kingpin that is just an archetype that exists, and especially in Mexico City, like drug kingpins exist in Mexico, yes, but they exist in specific places. Like Mexico City is the heart of power for the state of Mexico. They keep that shit it's not perfect, but that's where all the power is consolidated. And throughout this, you see some other things pop in here and there that just shows how they're walking around. Jacques is walking around with the simplest racist belief of what Mexico is. One of them being is when Zoe Saldana is about to fly to Bangkok, she is on a phone call with like some airlines customer service trying to buy a ticket, and the customer service is like baffled that this lawyer might take a first class flight to Bangkok. And that's just so strange. Mexico is one of the largest economies in the world, larger than Spain, larger than the Netherlands. But in the mind of Jacques, it's beyond belief, or, it needs to be shown as a spectacle that a Mexican might take a first class flight.
Yeah, I feel like he's trying to be anti-racist by like calling out certain things in the movie. Like Zoe Saldana's character basically says that the reason why she says she'll start her firm when she stops being black. Like that's what she says in the song. So like you could tell that like Jacques, as you call him, is trying to like, put some of these ideas in the movie, but it kind of ends up, horseshoe theorying a little bit when he's like, well, this is like what Mexico is. This is how people see Mexico. When in reality, it's like, do we really need this French guy to tell us about this?
Yeah. No. I mean, no. I mean, I don't need a French perspective in Mexico and Mexico's issues. Because I think that there is this liberal mindset happening here where the belief that propping up these issues on the big screen in a musical, where he actually does call out Cabaret, which does it much better than he's just kind of like dropping more into the larger narrative of the United States, or maybe even the Western world, should be against the Latino side of things. And I fucking hate that. I hate it. Especially in a time where mass deportations are kind of on the menu.
Yeah. There's the scene where Zoe Saldana is singing at a gala, and she's talking about how like all the Mexican government officials are like corrupt and like have like slit someone's throat or done something terrible. And it's like, okay, so this is like what you're kind of presenting as like all, I mean, it's you know, not all Mexican government officials are in the room, but all the ones that are in the room are like this. So like, what are you saying and what are you leaving out about like America's complicity in what's happening?
It's so odd. Even in that scene, like Emilia talks about, oh, she doesn't know the British royals. The British royals are some of the biggest monsters ever. And yeah, the judge that is just there, yeah, that's the pinnacle of evil. And it's so odd. It's so odd. It's not a conversation of the 2020s. It's a conversation of the 1990s. And I think that is also why there's like this so much Oscar talk about it. Because it is just showing, it is reinforcing the belief that of the larger narrative that exists now. A couple of other things to note is a lot of this is about showing how dangerous Mexico is. There's a lot of murders that happen in Mexico. There's no denying that. There's in 2023 there were close to twice as many murders in Mexico than there were in the United States. No one needs to be murdered, you know, like, but seeing this scene that we talked about earlier about in the restaurant where this conversation is happening in Spanish about Zoe Saldana staying and just kind of chilling. A mother passes by and gives a flyer. This flyer has a picture of her son, and she says he's missing. And that is a clear allusion to some very famous murders, disappearances that happened in Mexico in 2014 in Iguala Mas. It's where about 40 students who are learning to be teachers were disappeared, probably murdered. But like, I don't want to, I don't want to believe people are dead, if they're not confirmed. And that's a clear indication of that, to the point that she says, yeah, they went down south and he went missing in fall 2013. And what happened there is a tragedy. But why is this French man alluding to this tragedy for the sake of describing Mexico as a dangerous place in every corner? There's a montage of talking when the NGO side of things are happening, where a gunman is talking about where they left all the bodies. And I did a quick search of every place. I'm bad with directions. And it's about 3,000 miles from the northwest side of Mexico down to the southeast side of Mexico, where this montage is saying, yeah, we killed people everywhere, in every dark corner of Mexico. And there's a million of those. So yeah, fuck this guy.
Yeah, I think I also think like the way that
Fuck Napoleon III.
the movie presents this NGO as kind of like the solution to like this huge societal problem. It, it's just so funny that this movie brings so many like parts of liberalism together. Like this idea that like I mean, you know, in America, we're very, especially in political organizing, we're very familiar with like how NGOs, like they usually like they're treating a symptom of the problem. They're not like actually solving the root issue, because if they would solve the root issue, then the NGO wouldn't be needed anymore. Then you wouldn't need to have these big galas where all this money is raised. And it feels like a very Hollywood thing of like, okay, let's have them start an NGO and it's gonna solve this issue. And I also feel like, you know, this is one of the things that is used to like stir fear in people, like this idea that like, oh, you know, if you go to Mexico, you might get kidnapped, you might go missing, etc. And yeah, just like the way that the movie treats all of this, it just feels icky to me. And I know that off mic we've also talked about how let's bring the AMLO into this, and like let's bring the evolution of like the feminist movement in Mexico in this. Like what is missing from this movie that has been happening in Mexico?
In 2022, you and we lost the right to abortion in the United States. You know, that kind of sucks, you know. I mean, I don't like it. But in 2023, Mexico decriminalized abortion. They didn't exactly legalize it, but the Supreme Court decriminalized it. In other words, you could just get an abortion. It might not be the most legally protected thing, but fuck, it's more than what you and I got right here in Chicago. In Lily Wachowski's very own Chicago. And that came about after years of this feminist movement that's been brewing since the 70s, trying to push for rights. It came about. It came about, and part of that is also this larger move towards socialist left and economic left movements that started under AMLO, who was the former president of Mexico, where he did things like double the minimum wage for people in Mexico. He also started nationalizing the energy sector in Mexico, removing some like regressive policies that were set in the previous administration under Peña Nieto on things like the big national petroleum company Pemex is now more owned by the state, and all of this has increased the standard of living for Mexicans. So many Mexicans, literally millions. I think it was like 20 million. I think I read about 20 million Mexicans have been yoinked out of poverty under AMLO. I would love everybody to be yoinked out of poverty. And the newest president, who is Claudia Sheinbaum, was kind of mentored by AMLO, and she's followed up on all of these like victories. She's increased the ownership of those energy companies. And she's just very recently, she put some grocery price caps on things like corn tortillas, soap, beans, that kind of stuff. Things that actively people talked in the United States in the 2024 election, how they wanted to vote for Trump because the egg prices were too high.
Yeah.
But in Mexico, they did the very radical, impossibly radical thing of saying, no, you can't price gouge people.
Yeah.
But Jaquez doesn't know dick about that.
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if, like, you know, he's like, oh, I should just set this in Mexico. Yeah, we're going to have the cartel. And then, like, you know, I doubt he really did much research into, like, what's actually happening in Mexico beyond, like, the headlines. And, yeah, like, I would, like, I love that you brought this perspective because I feel like a lot of the critiques of this movie have, like, focused on, like, how it's like failed in its trans narratives. But the thing is, like, this movie is failing in so many areas. And yeah, what a mare.
Yeah. Like, as a movie, it's whatever. I don't know. I kind of watched it twice, but, like, I just don't give a shit about it. You know?
I think that the fact that this movie, you know, it is a trans story. It is a story about Mexico, even if it's not a good one. I think it is interesting to, like, analyze how those intersect with what's happening in the US currently, because I think that this movie is made for US audiences in a lot of ways. I think the fact that you have two big celebrities, Zoe Saldana and Selena Gomez in it, I feel like they did that knowing they wanted American people to watch this movie. And, you know, this is happening, like, regardless of whether Trump would have won, like, trans people are under attack, immigrants are under attack. That would have been true even if Kamala won. And, you know, the left and liberals, because I guess got to distinguish those, both have anxieties about, like, what is going to happen to trans people and to immigrants. And I feel like this movie, you know, it tries to be progressive and tries to, like, tell stories about people who you know, Americans may not usually see stories about. But it does both in it does for both parties in a way that really flattens, like, what stories are told, and in the end ends up just, like, making things so much worse. And if I think about, like, what stories do I want to see right now in the face of mass deportations being threatened, in the face of gender affirming care potentially being outlawed for children, it's definitely not this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I from my research, it seems like this was produced mostly with European production companies. And I don't know if Jaquez cared about the American gays so much to make a Spanish language movie directed at, like, you know, buffeting, you know, equality here. I say that because one of the things that, like, we don't really, like, sit down to talk about, like, you know, meat and potatoes as, like, political shit. Like, but one of the things that's happened over the last 10 years is conservatism has won. Like, I don't say that happily, but conservatism has won. I don't know how much you keep up with international news, but here you throw on, especially post-election, Pod Save America or CNN or Fox News, or you read Nate Silver's screeds on Bluesky because they're auto posted there. And you hear the same thing that's been said for years now, which is woke. Woke this, woke that, woke this. And in France, there's very similar an issue there. Conservatism has won there too. The French people have lost rights. I think they very recently lost a national holiday, so a day off. And you know the French don't work. You know they love those vacations. And they also reduced the age of retirement a couple of years ago. And that's fucked up. But that's because conservatism has won there. And one of the ways that you could see that is the French use woke as a pejorative too. The same way that the American conservatism does. Except they call it wokismo, or something like that. The British do too. This can be seen everywhere. I'm fairly certain I've seen a speech by Putin where he has thrown the word at woke. And it just shows that internationally, especially in the West, and very ironically not in Mexico, conservatism has won.
This is making me remember that we forgot to do Hopecast last time, and we definitely need to do a Hopecast at the end of this one, because I think like conservatism is definitely on the rise, and like there are definitely many cases where like conservatism has won, but I feel like, you know, I'm optimistic, or at least I try to be, and I definitely see instances where like you can even look at this recent election, and it's easy to like use the narrative like, oh, America shifted right, but then there are all the cases where it's like, okay, well, maybe America just didn't really like Kamala, and didn't see any other options, and actually people do want abortion when they can vote directly for it. But yeah, definitely there are cases like all over the world. And this French guy, he's not going to highlight like the ways that Mexico actually is getting better. He's gonna just he's not going to look inwards at France either. He wants to just make something flashy, something that's gonna get people talking, and. Yeah, regardless of whether he made it with American eyes in mind or not.
It blows.
You know, before we get into the Hopecast, I feel like we got to talk a little bit more about Selena Gomez. I would say she gives the worst performance in this movie. And, you know, she's had good performances in other pieces of art recently. Like, I'm not like a huge Only Murders in the Building fan, but I think she's pretty good in that. But this movie... No, not good at all. And it is funny. I looked in it and I saw she has been nominated for some awards for this movie. I know.
Internationally or here? Is she gonna win a Juno award?
Yeah, I want to like.
Is she gonna win a BAFTA?
Yeah, so you know, on the Wikipedia page they have like the list of accolades, and Selena Gomez, you know, she was nominated for an Astra Film and Creative Arts Award. She got the Spotlight Award for IndieWire Honors. And
wherever IndieWire goes, the Academy goes.
Yeah. The Virtuoso Award looks like it went to both Carla Sofia Gascon and Selena Gomez from the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. So, you know, certainly she hasn't been the main focal point of awards attention, but she has gotten some. I have to say, the only award she deserves is the Razzie.
Yo. Yeah, you could remove Selena Gomez and the kids from this.
I'm gonna try to keep the kids, but we can compromise.
You know, I mean, we're different people. You can remove both those aspects, and I would like this movie better. When you hear Selena Gomez's accent, are you like, oh, pues eso se escucha como español?
So you told me you watched the movie before me, and you told me that like her accent was pretty bad. So I was on the lookout for it, and I was like, yeah, I could tell that the way she speaks Spanish is different than the way that other people are. I feel like I'm not enough of an expert myself to like give detailed critiques, but I could definitely tell that there was something weird going on.
Because it would be racist. If you would do it, I would be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Selena Gomez is half Mexican, half Italian, if I remember correctly. But she's all American. Her accent is like, you know, I've been told that I got a little bit of a no sabo accent. And maybe I do, but like her Spanish, I learned that she needed to like memorize her Spanish lines, which is like visible in the movie. I was gonna memorize some French lines for this, but then I realized no. No, I could barely pronounce Jacques. Her acting is just also. I like her dancing more than I like her acting.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm gonna try not to be too mean, so I'm not gonna like say.
Did you just use me to say all the mean things? Wow, typical.
Well, the things I want to say.
White woman activity. Get your brown man to do the
thing. Okay, the mean thing I want to say is I feel like her legacy as a pop artist has kind of gone downhill. Partially because there was that, I think it was like a Billboard list that recently came out as like the best pop, or like, you know, the best pop artists of the century so far. And like Justin Bieber was in the top 10. Selena Gomez, nowhere to be found. So like, are we finally able to admit that like she's not like a compelling pop artist?
I literally know 0 songs of Selena Gomez. I literally only know her as a billionaire because she like has a line of makeup, I think. That's it.
Yeah.
I think she was a Disney kid, but I literally I do not know.
Yeah.
I do not know.
She was good in Spring Breakers. So there's that.
I saw Spring Breakers once, like literally 63 years ago. I don't remember much of it.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, Selena Gomez, she has talent. She's done some good things, but this is not one of them. You know what? Let's end it on a good note. Let's end it on a hope cast. So we introduced this a couple episodes ago, and in this segment, we share something that is giving us hope.
And we could just go ahead and say up top, something that's giving the both of us hope is how dominant Emilia Perez is going to be at the Oscars next year. So we'll just get that passed.
Yeah, that's the freebie, of course.
Yeah, that's the middle of the bingo card here.
Yeah, and yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I can say the death of CEOs because that would be too obvious.
The life of CEOs.
I will say something that's given me hope is that I think that trans writers are starting to be recognized more, and I mean that both like in the creatives. For the creatives like Vera Drew, like Jane Schoenbrunn, who, you know, got a shout out from Martin Scorsese.
And there's also like in front of the camera, like Hunter Schafer just dropping heaters.
Yeah. And I also mean it in the sense of like critics. You know, you have Willow Maclay and Kate and Mark Gardner, who released their book Corpses, Fools and Monsters, which everyone should get if they haven't. You know, we have a friend of the show, Grace, is releasing a book next year, and more on that soon. And I think there's a lot to like hate about Emilia Perez, and you know, like it makes me mad to think about that this is the trans story that is being told. But I think at the same time, like there is hope because more trans people are getting the opportunity and the recognition that they deserve. And, you know, while this is happening, while our rights are being stripped away, I have faith that in the end, we are going to win. Trans people will win. And this movie is not going to be a landmark on the path there, but
Purely off of Jackie's, because Carla was great in it.
yeah, I hope that Carla gets to be in a movie that I actually like. That would be great.
Yeah, that's a good hope. I'll admit, not many things are giving me hope these days. I think we're entering a time where seemingly less and less barriers and obstacles are being placed on normal people expressing how much they hate the current way things are operating. And I do like that. Like, I think that's great. I think it just feels like something in the air, something unknowable to me. It just, when I scroll through TikTok or read at the reception of media, like, it just feels like a lot of people are like this again. Oh, like Moana 2. Like, everything I've seen about Moana 2 has just been people being like, this. Oh, this. Oh, this.
Yeah.
Including some of the news that I've heard about, like the comic book side of films. Like, people are just like, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
And that's just the media and the and art side of things. All I know is that it feels like a lot of people are kind of done with the status quo, and they're looking for something else.
Yeah.
I don't know why my hope is sounding like a 20-year plan, but like, but my hope is that it just feels like a lot of people are like more open about, yeah, this fucking blows.
Yeah.
This fucking sucks.
Definitely. I like that. Well, if you want more hope, Dove Weather is a great place to go. So thank you for listening. You can find us on
Instagram
and
Bluesky.
That's right. And you can listen to us on
YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast.
basically everything under the sun.
All under the beautiful name Dove Weather.
Yeah. And people should give us how many stars?
5 stars, a $5 tip, and a Christmas present.
That'd be nice. Yeah. I thought about saying during your Hopecast, sounds like it's feeling a little bit like Christmas.
And you know, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody.
Thanks.
2024 is almost over, and we are better for it.
Absolutely. Bye.